How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at The Strangers Chapter 1. This is from May 17th, 2024, and is directed by Renny Harlan, who has had a long career, but horror fans will know him for Nightmare on Elm Street 4, the cult classic movie Prison, and The Exorcist: The Beginning. This movie stars Madelaine Petsch, Ryan Bowen, and Matus Lajack. And this is a remake of the original Strangers movie with the goal of doing a pre-planned trilogy of films. Now, I know that some of the ads made this movie seem like it was going to be an origin story. It is not. It is more or less the first one, but with a few plot elements and a few sequences changed. And to be honest, I was watching this movie and just kind of wondering, why didn't we just do Strangers Chapter 2? Why did we bother with a remake? And then I realized that they probably wanted to use some characters from the first movie, and the actors wouldn't be available. So honestly, this whole movie just exists to explain a recasting. Cool. Whatever. I will say, the first Strangers is a movie I absolutely love. I went through this period where I watched almost every single horror movie my library had, and this was one that stood out the most amongst all of those. It was a nice surprise, and I watched it. It was good, it was tense, it was serious, and I absolutely loved it. But I really loved the characters of the Strangers. They were interesting killers with cool masks, and I thought they were really cool, and I wanted to see more movies with them. I wanted to bring these characters back for something, and, you know, random true crime styled stuff. Yeah, you can do that all day. We would eventually get Strangers Prey at Night, which was more pulpy and fun. Like, I get a lot of people didn't like that it was a totally different flavor, and I will admit it was flawed, but Strangers Prey at Night had a bunch of energy behind it. I thought it was fun, and I overall enjoyed it. And then we get to Strangers Chapter 1, and this is pulpy, but it's also cliched and just not near as good, you know? And I think the thing with Strangers Chapter 1 is if you are unfamiliar with the Strangers and you found this for cheap somewhere, like if you found it streaming, you would watch it and you would say, it's good enough. It's a horror movie B-side. It's good for a lazy Saturday afternoon if you just want to watch an okay, scary movie. But the thing is, that's the level where this one's at. And the original is an absolute all-time classic. So it's not so much that it's the worst movie ever, it's just disappointing and a huge step down from the original. I mean, to be honest, the characters are just kind of jokey, the scares are super telegraphed, and, like, there's even an ad for a banking app in here, which, that's not great. And overall, you get to the end of the movie and you just wonder, how are these characters still alive? The first one had tone and atmosphere and tension. The first movie was a classic, and whatever magic was there in the first is simply gone from this. It's a B-side, it's not terrible, but it's not the first movie, and it really is going to suffer from comparison. Overall, you don't have to be in a huge hurry to see this. Again, I would bet that you could watch Strangers Chapter 2 without having seen this in just the original and just know that there's a recasting. It's not the worst thing ever, but it's nowhere near what it could have been. I guess in order to explain it further, I do want to talk a bit about the plot. I'm not going to do any major spoilers. I'll be avoiding the end, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points and do some analysis. I know people are super sensitive to spoilers for new movies, so if you want to pause it here and come back after you've seen it, that's fine, but I won't be ruining big stuff. Anyway, we open up with the new version of the couple, and this time they're going to Portland because she has a job interview, and she's hoping that she can get a better paying job in a big city. The couple this time around is more laughy and jokey and lovey-dovey, and they're very modern, you know. She's a vegetarian, they're on their phones way too much, and some of their dialogue does feel a little expository. Overall, they're bubbly, but they're not as good as the last couple, and one of the things that you notice is they're not breaking up. In the first movie, he had proposed to her, she said no, and their sort of lovers getaway retreat was super awkward because of that, and in turn we had tension and drama, and it was compelling before the strangers showed up. But this one, they're just happy, so cut out that plot point for some reason, whatever. They go to this small town, they stop at a diner, and then their truck won't start, and they have to stay at the town's one and only Airbnb. So the strangers trap them. This was all a ploy. It's less random. In the first one, they just, happen to be home, and the strangers happen to wander by. Having it be a trap takes away from the random and chaotic element, and also makes it seem less believable. They also do the trope of a small town with a secret that hates outsiders, and that really wasn't the first movie. And also, even though it doesn't tell us who the strangers are, we now have suspects, and having suspects makes them seem less random. And overall, this whole thing was a poor choice, but I get they were trying to make it different and trying to play into pre-existing horror tropes. It's just not good. Then we get to the cabin, and we do get those cliched jump scares. The camera looks away and looks back, and something that was there is now gone, or vice versa. Or he's standing behind her and she doesn't notice. It's not great. It's cliche and predictable. In fact, there'll be a sequence later in this movie where they're in the darkness and then they find a light, and when they turn it on, one of the strangers is behind them. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've seen this exact same sequence in an episode of Scooby-Doo. And yeah, it's just not great. And I think whenever this comes out on physical media, I would grab it, and I would grab the original. And I think if you guys are studying horror, if you want to be horror directors, watch the original and this back-to-back and figure out why the scary sequences don't work, because there are parallels in the original movie to stuff we've seen here, but why does the original work and this doesn't? It could be a whole case study in and of itself. But anyway, eventually they know the strangers are there, and they kind of just jump to that point. Not necessarily escalation, just all of a sudden they're there and they're chasing them. And that's where we see the couple's poor decision-making really highlighted. One of the early examples that explains so much of this movie is they see the strangers are there, and they run into the bedroom and lock the door, put something in front of it, and then just sit there. Okay, they ran away and they locked themselves up, but now they're just gonna sit there and cry? Like, you're not gonna do anything else? You're just gonna sit there? And then the stranger will chop away at the door and then leave, and these characters are dumb enough to go, he's probably gone. Let's exit this safety and go see if we can get out. It's stupid. And like later on in the movie, there's a whole sequence where he trips on almost nothing and drops his inhaler. And I'm like, this couple, how did they live throughout most of this movie? But anyway, the strangers themselves, I will say they're more or less the same. They're not as scary this time around, but I think that's more the movie than the strangers. There is a sequence where Pinup is acting a little strange. It's a sequence with a shotgun, and I think they're trying to show that she doesn't care, but she's acting a little goofy. And then also the big one is Baby Doll. She has a beanie on, and in turn we don't get that long blonde hair, and that was a super iconic part of her design, was the hair, and now we don't get that. It's less cool looking, and it's harder to tell the difference between the two girls when it's kind of dark, and that's just not as good. But she does sing Rockabye Baby, so that we remember which one's Baby Doll and which one's Pinup. It's not as good. Overall, the first one worked. The first one had magic. The first one had atmosphere and tension. and this one doesn't. They didn't recapture that lightning in the bottle, and it's not a particularly great horror movie on its own. It's a random B-side that ultimately, it's aggressively okay and kind of cliched, and that in and of itself is fine, whatever, but when you compare it to the original, that's really where it does suffer. I would say wait to catch it on streaming, and wait till you have a day where you don't have much to do and just want to sit on the couch and kill a little time. Whatever. It's a B-side. Anyway though, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my 2024 movies playlist. If you want to see me talk about other movies like Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, the new Ghostbusters movie, The First Omen, that one was really good. If you guys want to see more, you can click right there and see more. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.